original narrative, especially created for Love Behind Gold. Emma Pierce stands at the edge of Dominic Blackwood's penthouse balcony. City lights glittering below like the diamonds on her borrowed engagement ring. Her trembling fingers trace the cold metal band as she watches him through the glass doors. The man who has been her best friend for 15 years, and her fake fiancé for 3 weeks. The way he moves, confident yet guarded, makes something unfamiliar flutter in her chest. Tonight, when he'd placed his hand possessively on her lower back at the gala, she'd felt heat spread through her body, a reaction she couldn't explain away as part of their charade. What terrifies her isn't the arrangement they've made, or the lies they're telling the world. It's the way her heart races when he looks at her with those dark eyes that seem to know every secret she's ever kept, even the ones she's hiding from herself. She needed a fiancé for 6 weeks. He'd been in love with her for 6 years. Emma's paced the length of Dominic Blackwood's sleek office, her Louboutins clicking against the marble floor, through floor-to-ceiling windows. Manhattan sprawled beneath them, but neither paid attention to the view. Dominic watched her from behind his desk, his expression carefully neutral, despite the storm brewing inside him. "I wouldn't ask if I had any other option," Emma said, stopping to face him. Her caramel hair was pulled into an immaculate chignon, not a strand out of place, just like everything in her carefully curated life, until now. "Let me get this straight," Dominic leaned forward, resting his elbows on his desk. "Your parents are forcing you to marry Charles Winthrop to secure some merger, and your solution is for us to pretend to be engaged." Emma nodded, her green eyes pleading. "That's all I need to convince them I've made my choice and break their agreement with the Winthrops." Dominic stood, 6'2" of controlled power in a bespoke suit, self-made billionaire by 35. He'd built Blackwood Tech from nothing, while Emma had been born into the Pierce dynasty, old money and older expectations. "Why me?" he asked, though he already knew. They'd been friends since college, the scholarship student, and the heiress who'd bonded over art history and late-night study sessions. "Because they respect you. Because you're the only person I trust." Her voice softened. "Because you're my best friend, Dom. Friend." The word was both a badge of honor and a knife to his heart. Emma approached his desk, determination hardening her delicate features. "I've spent my entire life being the perfect Pierce daughter. I've curated their collections, hosted their galas, smiled at their business associates. But I won't let them sell me like another acquisition." Dominic turned away, ostensibly to look out the window, actually to hide the emotions he knew would be visible on his face. 6 years he'd loved her. 6 years of friendship when he wanted so much more. 6 years of watching her date men who didn't deserve her, while he remained in the safe category of best friend. What exactly would this entail? His voice carefully controlled. Public appearances, family dinners, the usual society events. We announce our engagement. I get leverage against my parents' plans. And after 6 weeks, we have an amicable, private breakup. She hesitated. "I know it's asking a lot." "You have no idea what you're asking," he thought. "And what about your career? The museum?" "The Pierce Gallery exhibition opens in 5 weeks. I've worked 3 years for this opportunity." Her voice hardened. "I won't let my parents' schemes derail everything I've built." Dominic turned back to her, studying the woman he'd loved from afar for so long. Emma Pierce, brilliant curator, loyal friend, the woman who'd never seen him as anything but her reliable confidant. And now she was asking him to pretend to love her, when loving her in secret had been the defining struggle of his adult life. "We'd need boundaries," he said finally. "Rules." Hope flickered across her face. "Of course. I'm serious, Emma. This can't be improvised. If we're doing this, we're doing it properly." She nodded quickly. "I actually prepared something." From her designer handbag, she withdrew a folded document and placed it on his desk. Dominic raised an eyebrow as he scanned the pages. "A contract for our fake engagement. I'm a Pierce. We don't do anything without paperwork," she said with a small smile. He continued reading, his expression darkening at certain clauses. No unnecessary physical contact. All public displays of affection to be discussed and agreed upon in advance. His voice was steady, betraying nothing of how each word carved into him. Separate accommodations at all times. Just to keep things clear between us, she explained. I don't want this to make things awkward. Too late, he thought. The final clause is most important, Emma said quietly. Our friendship comes first. If at any point this charade threatens what we have, we end it immediately. Dominic looked at her, really looked at her, taking in the slight tremor in her hands, the vulnerability behind her composed facade. Emma Pierce was scared, and she'd come to him because she trusted him completely, because she had no idea how he felt about her. 6 weeks, he said finally. No more. Relief washed over her face. Thank you, Dom. I'll never forget this. He reached for a pen, signing his name with a decisive stroke. As she added her signature beside his, their hands briefly touched, and he pulled away as if burned. When do we start? He asked. The Westfield Charity Gala is this Saturday. Everyone who matters will be there, including my parents and the Winthrops. She straightened, already transforming into the society heiress she'd been raised to be. It's the perfect place to make our announcement. Dominic nodded, already calculating how he would survive 6 weeks of having everything he wanted in the most painful way possible. One question, he said as she gathered her things to leave. What happens after the 6 weeks? When you're free of your parents' plans. Emma paused at the door, a shadow crossing her face. Freedom, I hope. The chance to make my own choices. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Don't worry. I'll make sure our breakup preserves your reputation as New York's most eligible bachelor. As the door closed behind her, Dominic picked up the contract, reading again the clinical terms of their arrangement. 6 weeks of pretending to be the man she loved, knowing that for her, it was nothing but an act. He'd just signed up for his own personal hell. The Westfield Charity Gala transformed the Metropolitan Museum's Grand Hall into a glittering showcase of wealth and influence. Under crystal chandeliers, New York's elite circulated like exotic fish in a gilded aquarium. Dominic stood at the entrance, adjusting his bow tie. He'd attended countless such events, but tonight was different. Tonight, he was playing a role he'd rehearsed only in his dreams. Then he saw her. Emma descended the marble staircase in a midnight blue gown that left one shoulder bare, her hair cascading in soft waves. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and for a moment, Dominic forgot to breathe. You're staring, she whispered when she reached him, a nervous smile playing on her lips. I'm supposed to be besotted, he replied, offering his arm. Just following the script. Her hand slipped into the crook of his elbow, warm through the fabric of his tuxedo. My parents are by the East Gallery. Charles and his family are near the bar. Dominic's jaw tightened at the mention of Charles Winthrop, heir to Winthrop Industries, and the man Emma's parents had chosen for her. Then let's give them something to talk about. They moved through the crowd with practiced ease, stopping to exchange pleasantries with board members and benefactors. Dominic found himself falling naturally into the role of devoted partner, his hand at the small of her back, his eyes rarely leaving her face, his body angled protectively toward hers. Dominic Blackwood. A sharp voice interrupted their conversation with the museum director. I didn't expect to see you tonight. Eleanor Pierce approached, elegant in Chanel and disapproval, behind her. William Pierce regarded them with calculating eyes. Mother, father, Emma greeted them, her grip on Dominic's arm tightening. You remember Dominic? Of course, William said. Though I wasn't aware you two were close. We've been keeping it private, Dominic replied smoothly, until recently. Eleanor's gaze flicked to her daughter. How recently? Before Emma could answer, Dominic slipped his arm around her waist, drawing her closer. Recent enough that I haven't had time to speak with you properly, sir, he addressed William. About my intentions toward your daughter. William's eyebrows rose. Intentions. Emma leaned into Dominic's embrace, playing her part perfectly. We wanted to tell you together. Dominic and I are engaged. The silence that followed was brittle with tension. This is unexpected, Eleanor finally said, her smile not reaching her eyes. Especially given our discussions about your future, Emma. I'm aware of your arrangements, Mrs. Pierce, Dominic interjected, his voice polite but firm. But Emma has made her choice. William studied them, his expression unreadable. The Winthrops are here tonight. This puts us in an awkward position. Not as awkward as arranging your daughter's marriage without her consent, Dominic countered, feeling Emma stiffen beside him. A flash of anger crossed William's face, quickly masked. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. Tomorrow. Dinner at the house. We'd be delighted, Emma replied, her society smile firmly in place. As her parents moved away, Emma exhaled shakily. That went about as well as expected. They didn't believe us, Dominic observed. Then we'll have to be more convincing. The orchestra began a waltz, and without warning, Dominic led her to the dance floor, his hand settled at her waist, the other clasping hers as they moved in perfect synchrony. Everyone's watching us, she murmured. That's the point. He pulled her closer than their agreement stipulated, his cheek nearly touching her temple. You're 3 o'clock. Winthrop staring. Emma didn't turn to look. Instead, she surprised him by sliding her hand to the nape of his neck, her fingers brushing against his hair. The unexpected intimacy sent a jolt through him. What happened to no unnecessary physical contact? He asked, his voice lower. This feels necessary, she replied, then added softly. Thank you for doing this, Dom, for always being there when I need you. The words transported him back to their college days. Emma crying on his shoulder after her first heartbreak, Dominic comforting her through the night while burying his own feelings, her constant defender, her trusted friend, never letting her see how each moment of closeness was both heaven and torture. Do you remember the night we met? She asked suddenly. That awful freshman mixer. He remembered everything about that night, the red dress she'd worn, how she'd been hiding in the library alcove to escape some persistent fraternity boy, how she'd looked up at him with those green eyes and said, either rescue me or leave me alone. You told me I was the least annoying person you'd met at Columbia, he recalled, smiling at the memory. High praise from me, she laughed, then grew serious. 15 years, Dom. You're the only constant I've had. The waltz ended. But they remained close, suspended in their shared history. Over Emma's shoulder, Dominic caught William Pierce watching them, suspicion evident in his narrowed gaze. Your father doesn't look convinced, he murmured. Emma pulled back slightly to look at him. What do we do? Without overthinking, Dominic brushed a strand of hair from her face, his fingertips lingering against her cheek. We make them believe, he said, and bent his head toward hers, close enough that anyone watching would think they were sharing an intimate moment. Is this part of the act? She whispered, her breath warm against his lips. Every second of it, he lied. 3 weeks into their charade, Emma found herself in Dominic's penthouse more often than her own apartment. Tonight, they sat surrounded by social calendars and seating charts for the upcoming museum gala, her professional triumph, and their last major public appearance as a couple. The Abbotts need to be at least 2 tables away from the Vandermeyers, she muttered, crossing out names on her diagram. They haven't spoken since that scandal with their daughter. Dominic looked up from his laptop. Remind me why I'm helping you with museum politics. Because you're my devoted fiancé who supports my career. She grinned, tossing a cushion at him. He caught it easily, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Right. Emma paused, studying him. Lately, she'd noticed a heaviness in him, moments when he thought she wasn't looking, and his mask slipped. Are you okay? Is this getting to be too much? I'm fine, he said, closing his laptop. Just tired. The Singapore deal is taking more time than expected. She wasn't convinced, but didn't press. Instead, she stretched, wincing as her neck cramped from hours bent over paperwork. Come here, Dominic said, patting the space beside him on the sofa. What? Your neck. You're in pain. Come here. Hesitantly, she moved to sit in front of him. His hands settled on her shoulders, strong fingers finding the knots of tension with practiced ease. Emma closed her eyes, surprised by how natural it felt. When did you get so good at this? She murmured. Some of us didn't have personal masseuses growing up, Pierce. Had to learn the basics. His thumbs pressed into a particularly tight spot, and she couldn't suppress a small moan of relief. Immediately, his hand stilled. Too hard? He asked, his voice strangely rough. No, it's perfect, she said, then felt an inexplicable blush rise to her cheeks. The atmosphere in the room shifted subtly. Emma became acutely aware of his breathing. the warmth of his hands through her thin blouse, the scent of his cologne. When had Dominic started wearing cologne that made her want to lean closer? His phone rang, shattering the moment. He practically lunged for it, putting distance between them as he took the call. "Emergency at the Tokyo office," he said after hanging up. "I need to handle this." Emma gathered her papers, oddly disappointed. "Of course. I should get home anyway." At the door, he hesitated. "The foundation retreat is this weekend. My lake house in the Adirondacks. I remember. 3 days of pretending to be madly in love while charming potential donors." She attempted a light tone. "We'll have separate rooms," he assured her quickly. "Per our agreement." She nodded, unsure why the reminder irritated her. "See you Friday, then." The lake house was more accurately a modernist mansion nestled among ancient pines, glass and steel, softened by the natural surroundings. By Saturday evening, after a day of meetings with Dominic's foundation partners, Emma found herself alone on the deck overlooking the water, wrapped in a cashmere throw against the autumn chill. Escaping the crowd, Dominic appeared beside her, offering a glass of wine. "Just needed some air." She accepted the glass, their fingers brushing. "You were impressive today. The way you spoke about using technology to improve rural education." He shrugged, leaning against the railing. "It's important work." "I've never seen this side of you before," she admitted. "The passionate philanthropist. There's a lot you haven't seen," he said quietly, his gaze fixed on the darkening lake. The weight of his words hung between them. Emma studied his profile. The strong jaw now shadowed with stubble, the intensity in his dark eyes. Had he always been this handsome? Or had she simply never allowed herself to notice? "Tell me something I don't know about you," she said impulsively. He considered for a moment. "I bought my first company when I was 23. Not 25 like the press thinks. It was a failing software firm that everyone said was worthless." "Why that one?" "Because the founder reminded me of my father before he lost everything. I couldn't save my dad's business, but I could save his." Emma blinked, surprised by the admission. "You never told me that." "You never asked." His eyes met hers. "Your turn. Something I don't know." She hesitated, then said, "I almost ran away to Paris after graduation. Had the ticket bought and everything." "What stopped you?" "Fear, I guess. Of disappointing everyone. Of failing." She took a sip of wine. "Sometimes I wonder who I'd be if I'd gotten on that plane." "You'd still be you, Emma. Brilliant, stubborn, extraordinary." The sincerity in his voice made her heart skip. "Is that how you see me?" Before he could answer, rain began to fall, fat drops quickly becoming a downpour. They rushed inside, laughing as they made it through the sliding doors, just as lightning split the sky in the sudden darkness of the power outage. They stood close, dripping onto the hardwood floor. Dominic found a flashlight, its beam creating shadows across his features as he handed her a towel. "Your hair," he murmured, reaching out to brush a wet strand from her face. His touch lingered, and Emma felt herself leaning into his hand. The flashlight cast long shadows as they stood frozen in the moment. She whispered, uncertain what she was asking for. His phone shattered the silence, the screen illuminating his conflicted expression. He answered it, turning away. "The generator should kick in soon," he said after hanging up. "I need to check on our guests." Left alone in the semi-darkness, Emma pressed her fingers to her cheek, where his touch still burned. For the first time, she wondered if there was something real hiding beneath their careful performance, and the possibility terrified her. The rain continued for 3 days after they returned to the city. Emma stood in Dominic's penthouse, waiting for him to return from a meeting. They were due at her parents' home for dinner, another performance in their elaborate charade. She wandered restlessly through the space she'd visited countless times, but never truly explored. His home office door stood ajar, and she hesitated only briefly before entering. Unlike the minimalist design of the rest of his apartment, this room felt personal. Books lined the shelves, first editions of classics, technical manuals, art books she'd mentioned loving over the years. On his desk sat a small jade elephant she'd brought him from Thailand during her post-college travels. He'd kept it all this time. A drawer was partially open, revealing what looked like photo albums. Curious, Emma pulled one out, expecting childhood photos or family memories. Instead, she found herself, page after page of photographs spanning 15 years. Emma laughing at their college graduation. Emma asleep on his couch during a movie night. Emma at gallery openings and charity events. Some she recognized from group outings. Others she had no memory of. In one she was looking away, while Dominic gazed at her with an expression so nakedly adoring, it made her breath catch. The date on the back, 6 years ago. What are you doing? She whirled around to find Dominic in the doorway, his face pale. I was waiting for you and... She gestured helplessly at the album. Dom, what is this? Nothing, just photos. He moved to take it from her. But she stepped back. This isn't nothing. These are all of me. Her hands trembled as she turned pages. Some I don't even remember. Emma, tell me the truth. Her voice cracked. How long? The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. 6 years, he finally said, his voice barely audible. Since the night of your 25th birthday. The memory flashed in her mind. Her gallery debut, champagne under stars. Dominic steady beside her as always. 6 years, she repeated numbly. You've been in love with me for 6 years, and never said anything. What was I supposed to say? His composure cracked. That I'd fallen for my best friend. That I watched you date other men while pretending I was fine. Being just your friend? Emma closed the album, her mind racing. All this time, the fake engagement. Was your idea, he cut in sharply. Not mine, but you agreed to it. What choice did I have? His laugh was hollow. You needed me. You always need me, Emma, but never the way I need you. Rain lashed against the windows as they stood facing each other. The truth finally exposed between them. Why didn't you tell me? She whispered. And risk losing you completely. You've never seen me that way. You don't know that, she said. The words surprising her as much as him. Dominic stilled, his eyes searching her face. What are you saying? I don't know, she admitted. These past weeks, being with you like this, it's felt different, real. Hope and wariness battled in his expression. Different how? Instead of answering, Emma closed the distance between them. Her hand rose to his face, tracing the line of his jaw. His breath caught as she leaned in slowly, giving him time to pull away. He didn't. Their first real kiss was gentle, questioning. His hands remained at his sides as though afraid to touch her. When Emma deepened the kiss, threading her fingers through his hair, something broke in Dominic. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her against him with the desperation of a drowning man finding air. Emma, he breathed against her mouth, her name a prayer and a question. The intensity of her response frightened her. This wasn't acting. This wasn't friendship. This was something she'd never allowed herself to acknowledge. Something that threatened the careful boundaries of her life. Panic rose in her chest. She pulled away abruptly, stumbling backward. I can't do this, she gasped. Hurt flashed across his face. Can't do what exactly? This is too much. Too complicated. She gestured between them. We have an agreement, Dom. Boundaries. Boundaries, he repeated flatly. Is that what you're hiding behind now? I'm not hiding. I'm being practical. Our friendship. Stop. His voice hardened. Don't pretend this is about preserving our friendship. This is about you being afraid. That's not fair, isn't it? You came to me because you knew I'd say yes. Because I always say yes to you, Emma. Anger and pain twisted his features. Did you know how I felt? Deep down, did you use that? No. The accusation stung. How can you think that? Because you kissed me like you meant it. And now you're running. Again. Rain drummed against the windows as they faced each other across the growing chasm. I need time to think, she said finally. We don't have time. Your exhibition is in 2 weeks. Our engagement ends after that. His voice was controlled again, the vulnerability gone. So tell me now, Emma. Was that kiss real? Or just another part of the performance? The question hung between them. Emma felt trapped between truth and safety. Admitting her feelings meant risking everything. Their friendship, the comfortable patterns of her life, the control she'd always maintained. It was a mistake, she said, the lie bitter on her tongue. I got caught up in the moment, confused. Something died in his eyes. I see. Dom. No, I understand perfectly. He stepped back, rebuilding the walls she'd momentarily breached. It's fine. We stick to the plan. 2 more weeks of pretending. Then we end it cleanly. Can we talk about this? She pleaded. There's nothing to talk about. You've made yourself clear. He checked his watch with deliberate casualness. We're late for your parents. I'll have the car brought around. Dominic, please. I've loved you for 6 years, Emma, he said, his voice breaking. I've watched you walk away countless times. At least this time, I know it's the last. He left the room, leaving her alone with the evidence of his long-hidden love and the wreckage of what might have been. Through the window, lightning illuminated the city, matching the storm raging inside her. She'd gotten exactly what she wanted, freedom from her parents' plans. But as rain blurred the lights of Manhattan, Emma faced the possibility that in protecting herself from pain, she destroyed something irreplaceable. The Pierce family estate in the Hamptons had always felt more like a museum than a home. Emma, beautiful, cold, and filled with valuable things no one was allowed to touch. Now, a week after her disastrous confrontation with Dominic, the isolation of the place matched her state of mind. She sat in the garden pavilion, surrounded by the exhibition catalogs she should have been reviewing. The Pierce Gallery opening was in 3 days, and Dominic hadn't returned her calls since that night in his apartment. They'd attended her parents' dinner in a state of careful politeness, performing their roles flawlessly while something essential crumbled between them. I thought I might find you hiding out here. Emma looked up to see her grandmother, Catherine Pierce, approaching with 2 cups of tea. At 82, Catherine remained the only person in the family who had ever defied expectations and lived to tell about it. I'm not hiding, Emma protested weakly. I'm working. Catherine set the tea down and fixed her with a knowing look. You haven't turned a page in the 20 minutes I've been watching you from the house. Emma sighed, accepting the cup. Is it that obvious? Only to someone who's been where you are. Catherine settled beside her on the stone bench. Your young man hasn't been around lately. He's not my young man. No. Then why are you wearing his ring and carrying his heart around like it's a burden instead of a gift? Emma stared at the diamond engagement ring they'd selected together. Beautiful, expensive, and completely meaningless. Or so she'd thought. It's complicated, Gran. Love usually is. Catherine patted her hand. But regret is always simple. Trust me on that. Emma's phone buzzed with a message from her assistant. The Winthrop Industries deal her parents had been pursuing, the reason for their attempted matchmaking, had fallen through. Charles Winthrop was engaged to someone else, making her ruse with Dominic effectively pointless. She should have felt relieved. Instead, emptiness washed over her. I've made a terrible mistake, she whispered. Catherine's eyes softened. Then fix it. I don't think I can. I hurt him, Gran. I was so afraid of risking our friendship that I pushed him away when he finally showed me how he really felt. And how do you feel? The question hung in the air as Emma finally confronted the truth she'd been avoiding. I love him, she said, the words both frightening and freeing. I think I have for years, but I never let myself see it. Why not? Because he's the one person I can't bear to lose. Tears filled her eyes. And now I've lost him anyway. Catherine took the catalog from Emma's lap and closed it decisively. For someone so brilliant with art, you can be remarkably blind about life. Love isn't safe. It was never meant to be. But what if? What if nothing? Catherine's voice was firm. I watched your grandfather walk away because I was too proud to tell him I needed him. 60 years I've lived with that choice. Don't make my mistake. That night, Emma sat in her childhood bedroom surrounded by the trappings of her carefully constructed life. On her desk lay the society pages featuring photos of her and Dominic at various events. The perfect couple, according to the captions. In every image, his eyes were on her with an intensity that should have told her everything. She'd been so focused on maintaining control that she'd missed what was right in front of her. Taking out a sheet of her personal stationery, Emma began to write. Not an email, not a text. Dominic deserved more than digital convenience. She wrote through the night, filling pages with truths she'd never acknowledged, even to herself. How his friendship had been her sanctuary in a world of superficial connections. How she'd built walls to protect herself from disappointment, never realizing she was walling out happiness too. How terrified she was of needing someone who might leave. How, in these weeks of pretending, she'd discovered that being with him felt more real than anything in her carefully managed life. By dawn, she had filled 12 pages with her messy, honest truth. She sealed the letter and called her assistant. "Cancel everything," she instructed, "and find out where Dominic is." The answer came an hour later. After closing a major acquisition, he'd retreated to his remote cabin in Montana, the place he went when he needed to be unreachable. Emma looked at the exhibition plans spread across her bed. The opening was in 2 days, her professional triumph, the culmination of years of work. Leaving now would be professionally irresponsible, personally reckless. For the first time in her life, Emma Pierce decided to be reckless. She packed a single bag, placed her letter inside, and left a message for the gallery director explaining her absence. As her car pulled away from the estate, she felt a weight lifting, the burden of perfect appearances, of meeting expectations, of denying her own heart. She was finally choosing for herself. She only hoped she wasn't too late. Montana welcomed Emma with a snowstorm. The rental car struggled up the mountain road as twilight descended, the GPS signal fading in and out. By the time she spotted the lights of Dominic's cabin through the trees, night had fallen completely. She sat in the parked car for long minutes, gathering courage. Through the windows, she could see him moving around the rustic interior, the domesticity of the scene making her heart ache. This was Dominic without pretense, worn jeans, faded t-shirt, barefoot on hardwood floors. The man, not the billionaire. When she finally approached the door, snow crunching beneath her impractical city boots, her knock sounded too loud in the mountain silence. The door swung open. Dominic froze, shock evident in every line of his body. "Emma." His voice was rough, as if he'd been alone too long. "Hi," she said inadequately, snow melting in her hair. He didn't move to let her in. "What are you doing here?" "The exhibition opens tomorrow." "I know." "Then why aren't you in New York?" "Because you're here." She hugged herself against the cold. "Can I come in? It's freezing." He hesitated before stepping aside, his expression guarded as she entered the warm cabin. A fire crackled in the stone hearth, casting dancing shadows across exposed beams and simple, comfortable furniture. So different from his sleek penthouse, yet somehow more authentically him. "You should have called," he said, keeping distance between them. "Would you have answered?" His silence was confirmation enough. "I brought you something." She reached into her bag for the letter, now crumpled from travel. "I wrote everything down. All the things I should have said that night." He made no move to take it. "I don't need explanations, Emma. You were clear enough." "No, I wasn't." She stepped closer. "I lied to you that night because I was terrified." "Of what?" "Of this." She gestured between them. "Of how real it feels. Of needing you and then losing you." A muscle tightened in his jaw. "So you pushed me away first?" "Yes." The admission hurt. "It's what I've always done. But I don't want to do it anymore." Snow battered the windows as they stood facing each other. The letter still extended between them like a fragile bridge. "Read it," she whispered. "Please." Finally, he took it. As he read, his expression shifted from wariness to disbelief to something she was afraid to name. When he looked up, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You left your exhibition," he said, his voice unsteady. For me, is just a show. There will be others." She took a trembling breath. "But there's only one you, Dom. And the contract, our agreement." She moved closer, emboldened by the warmth returning to his eyes. "I don't want to pretend anymore. What do you want, Emma?" His voice was low, intent. "You," she said simply. "No audience, no performance. Just us, figuring out what this could be." He studied her face as if memorizing it, or looking for signs of deception. "I've wanted to hear those words for so long that I'm afraid to believe them. I know. I've given you every reason to doubt me." She reached for his hand, relief flooding through her when he didn't pull away. "I can't promise I won't be scared, but I can promise I won't run again." "That's a start." His fingers finally curling around hers. "I'm not leaving until you hear the whole truth," she said, echoing the words she'd written in her letter. "It was never fake for me either. Not the way I looked at you. Not the way I felt when you touched me. None of it." Dominic's free hand rose to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing away snowmelt or tears. She wasn't sure which. "Say it again." "I love you," she whispered. "I think I have for years. But I was too afraid to see it." The letter fell forgotten to the floor as he pulled her against him. His kiss nothing like their first. No hesitation, no questioning, only certainty, and a passion that made her knees weak. "Stay," he murmured against her lips. "For how long? How does forever sound?" 6 months later, Emma stood in the same ballroom where their charade had begun, watching Dominic across the crowd. The Westfield Charity Gala looked much the same: crystal chandeliers, wealthy patrons, champagne flowing freely. But everything else had changed. The ring on her finger was different. His grandmother's emerald, resized and given with real promises. Their engagement announcement in the Times had been brief but genuine, and when Dominic caught her eye across the room, the look they shared held no performance, no audience, no end date. As he made his way to her side, Emma thought of the contract they'd ceremonially burned in his Montana fireplace. 6 weeks of pretending had led to a lifetime of truth. She reached for his hand as he approached, no longer afraid of needing him or being needed in return. "Ready to go home?" he asked, his fingers intertwining with hers. Home. Not his place or hers, but the new beginning they were building together. "With you?" She smiled up at the man who had waited 6 years for her to see what had been in front of her all along. Always.